What's going on, everybody? BobbyFi back here with my man Sheets. We are doing a Fanduel lineup build show. We're gonna have Sheets call up. We just did a DraftKings show, so check that one out. We're gonna have Sheets call up his Fanduel lineup page and see who we got here so far, because it's a very different build on Fanduel than it is on DraftKings, as is always the case these days. However, today there is a lot of there's some more crossover, but there's this is a good example at first glance of a fairly chalky lineup. Would you agree, Sheets?
Yeah, well, this isn't even a lineup. This is 4,000 over. I just kind of put some guys in here that are going to be chalky. It was interesting because what's happening, and I kind of made this point yesterday. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but so yesterday, the pricing on FanDuel was just so soft across the board that what happened was that all that value, that cheap value that was pretty much necessary on DraftKings, you just didn't have to do it on FanDuel. So, you watch situations like that where some guys are just like really, really chalky on, say, on DraftKings. Sometimes it just their popularity carries over to FanDuel sometimes when it might not necessarily be needed. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I don't know if today's a case like that, but like yesterday, for example, they had such incredible mispricings on guys like Mitchell and not Mitchell, Mitchell specifically on FanDuel, that you didn't have to go play Monty Morris. You didn't have to go play Cam Johnson and guys that were just so cheap on DraftKings relative to other, kind of a little bit of a sharper salaries over there. So FanDuel, again, today, it's in a similar way. I mean, there are some plays that are just very, very difficult to fade, and maybe you can help me find a way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's definitely multiple routes to go. So I think we should get into it position by position, because starting at point guard, like even in my initial builds, you have the guys who I'm going to, and they're going to be popular, but there's different routes. One thing that I think is interesting is that Napier is going to be less owned over here. I don't love Napier tonight, but I think that if I was going to play him, I would take him as the non-chalk on FanDuel, where he's going to be the chalk on DraftKings at the same price. And DeJounte Murray, you could play him with DeJounte Murray to do something a little different, who will be the other popular guy. And then I think Luka's the other answer at point guard. There's not really like I think it was, as we talked about on the other show, I think that Lillard is probably, this is where you want to play the Lillard Doncic combo if you want to go that route. And I think that, Ben Simmons is fine, Chris Paul is fine, Ja Morant is fine, but honestly, if it's either going to be one of the first four guys I mentioned or Brogdon for me.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth with respect to Lillard. I mean, this is, this is on FanDuel. He rates to be, just quite about as good as some of these other guys. And I mean, Luka rates to be just a tremendous play here. It's going to be tough to get away from him. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could, but it's going to be one I'm not going to be trying to fade unless I have a really good reason to. DeJounte Murray, again, he looks to be a good play, but I think he's got, that kind of minutes risk that, certain Popovich risk that if he's incredible chalk and I can find some other way to go, I mean, I'm not going to like lock my life and say, God damn it, why don't I have 100% DeJounte Murray? You know what I mean? I'm not going to be that afraid that he just destroys me. So as you said, I mean, the first thing I might consider doing is spending up at the second one and going to Lillard and seeing if we can make concessions elsewhere as far as salaries go. You kind of hit on the other guys, actually, that I liked. I mean, pretty much in order, was Napier and Brogdon. Those would be the next guys on my list that I would pick, and they're not going to be as popular as some of the others. And if you do want to fade, Luka, for example, just because we mentioned the two of them together in the same game, I'm certainly not going to argue with playing a Brogdon, like God knows how to spell his freaking name, Brogdon alongside of Napier in that game, because you will get maybe to some other plays in that game that could fit FanDuel also. So if you do want to fade Luka, just make sure that you're replacing the points and make sure that you're also, replacing. You don't have to worry about replacing the ownership because you are, taking a really chalky guy out of there.
Yeah. I mean, and you could pivot over to Simmons. I would be interested in Trae Young as a pivot, but only if he was going to be like 2% owned, and I don't think that's going to happen. I think people are actually going to find ways to play him with Luka some. So I'm not really going to go for the overspend on Trae Young, but I do think with Ben Simmons, you certainly have a logical matchup where he could score 60 points, fantasy points. But direct pivots from Luka, I mean, are not really where I would be going. I would just be spending down and doing something a little bit differently.
Well, it's so funny the way the visuals just kind of just get to me. I mean, I built just kind of not a random lineup. I just made a lineup just to put players in I knew were going to be chalky because I knew we'd have to talk about them. And then like the first thing that I did, just completely zeroed this lineup out at like 100 left on the table. I'm kind of forced to play it. But anyway, let's.
You can also consider guys like Garland and Sexton, who I mentioned I liked quite a bit on DraftKings.
Okay.
You're basically getting the same for them, and there's better plays at point guard over here than there is over on DraftKings. I mean, there's better just plays at point. It's better. Everyone seems like a better play over here. So a guy who might seem like a good play on DraftKings is probably not quite as good a play on FanDuel because there's just a million guys who are really, really strong plays.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so let's move on to shooting guard. And what just happened? Nothing just happened. So the chalk on whatchamacallit, the chalk in the shooting guard position is not as dramatic as some of the other positions. It's kind of spread out a little more. Mm-hmm. But you are going to see the guys that I kind of put in here as a decent part of it. So, and they're all good plays. I mean, DeMar DeRozan looks to be pretty good here. Josh Richardson looks to be pretty good here. A guy I was very surprised is getting ownership, but I guess it shouldn't be surprised considering his price, is Andrew Wiggins, who I wanted to talk about anyway. And then it's like everybody's like, whatever, Levine, Beal, they're all going to be getting ownership. And let me just kind of see how that kind of jives with what I like. DeRozan does look like a pretty good play here. And Richardson looks fine, but I think that Richardson could be the first place where I might try to kind of finagle away with guys that are not as highly owned. Like maybe somebody like Dennis Schroeder at the same price point, rates to be very similar at much lower ownership. I could try him. If you want, if you want to pivot away from DeRozan, if in fact is as chalky as I think, is you could go up to Jimmy Butler, who we discussed on DraftKings a little bit, right? So those would be the guys I would look to. And then Andrew Wiggins, I mentioned. One guy I want to bring up, just because I didn't really talk about him on DraftKings, he's cheap here, is Delon Wright at 4K. So I don't know if I'm going to get down to Levine at 8,500. Not get down to him as far as my rankings go. I mean, I think I prefer. I guess I prefer Butler over Levine. Can I actually say that? I don't know. I guess I have to throw Levine in that mix also.
I mean, they're both like I don't see this is a good matchup for Butler. I like the spot for him, so I don't see any problem with that. Yeah. Either one of them. I personally am not spending up quite as much at shooting guard. Look, there's going to be the Bradley Beal wild. It'll end up in some of my lineups, no question. 7,500, you just got to take a shot. And I get the logic behind the Butler and Levine and DeRozan. I like just fine, but I really like Kevin Huerter.
Ooh.
I think that we've got to take a look. This guy's been at over 35 fantasy points on FanDuel 5 of his last 8 games. He was coming off a game with 54. They just lost Alan Crabb, so there's even more to go around in terms of at least another guy who's going to play 16 minutes and jack up a bunch of shots is not going to be on the court. So I think we can go back to assuming if this game is close, you might see the 35 to 40 minutes out of Huerter. You might get a game like you did last time out and like where he was at before they got into all those blowouts. So if this game stays close, I like the idea of playing Huerter, which is partly, and he also goes along nicely with, while I wasn't as crazy about LMA on DraftKings, I actually do like him a little bit on FanDuel. And I think I'm starting to like him better in general, actually. And I'm also playing DeJounte Murray in a lot of lineups. So sort of having a natural run back with Huerter feels like a nice way to go at 5,500. It's a little too cheap for his usage in this offense. They're still sort of delaying it because of where he was before. And I know that, he's had 3 games before that 54-point game that didn't look so great. Don't worry about that. There were 2 blowouts in there, and Huerter should play a bunch of minutes if this game stays close. So he's a really, really good off-the-board play, in my opinion. Along with Schroeder, you could play the 2 of them together even. I like Schroeder at that price. Another guy who I like spending down at is Jeremy Lamb. I know this is a weird play, but he's 4,500. They just had this matchup. He only put up 21, but he did play 28 minutes. He did take some shots. I think that there's enough upside to play him as just sort of like a wild card tournament play, which probably actually has a fairly, not a high floor, but a medium floor. And then DeLon Wright, you just got to worry about the minutes, but I don't mind it. I just don't think I'm going to be going there. I'm just not. I would rather play. I guess I would rather play Jeremy Lamb, who I feel like may have more upside for minutes, although it's probably debatable, but certainly has a higher floor for minutes.
You can see now the first 4 spots here. You see my brain starting to churn a little bit here.
Yeah.
You got like Brogdon, Lamb, Napier, and Wiggins. This is looking kind of interesting.
Yeah, and you got the amount left to fit in what's it called? If you want to move up over one of your power forwards, you could play Sabonis as well.
Oh, we're getting there, believe me. And the good thing is my power forwards, between the two of them, they're probably going to be about 100% owned. If you combine the two of their ownerships, it's very possible. One
guy I forgot to mention. So this feels weird because it feels like overspending, but he's been really good, and I like this matchup. I like the idea of maybe taking a shot on McCollum. You do worry a little bit ceiling-wise, especially with how their offense is currently constructed, but you've seen him he's been solid in there, 36, 39, 41 the last 3 times out. Another good matchup. Not in love with it because I like Beal at 7,500 better for the upside in case he gets back to old Beal. But it's kind of an interesting run back for Luka, and it's a good spot. I don't know. I'm definitely open to the idea of playing McCollum. Let's put it that way. I don't know for sure if I'm going to end up there, but I'm definitely open to it.
Yeah, and he'll definitely be one of the lower owned guys. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Let's move over to small forward.
So small forward, the lion's share of the ownership is going to go to Tobias Harris. They, instead of moving him up in price with him beat out, they just keep moving him down, I suppose. I don't know exactly what's going on, but he's going to be whatever percent owned you want to make him. He's going to be really chalky, and it's going to be, unfortunately for me, maybe a difficult fade, but we'll get to that in a second. The guy who's going to garner just an incredible amount of ownership is going to be Pascal Siakam. And then you might get a lot of people, or a decent amount of people, going value and playing Thibault, especially if he's starting. So let me just kind of, again, that's just my opinion on what's going to happen. So let me look through, and yeah, I mean, Tobias Harris looks really tough. I mean, he just does. He rates really, really well, and it's going to be a tough fade, I have to say. And Siakam looks really, really good too. Both these guys are in good matchups. You're going to play just a carload of minutes, and they just look, I don't know, they look pretty difficult. The one guy I was considering is now scratched, right? So Rudy Gay is scratched, so he's not playing. And then you're down to guys like Gallinari, who for me just never kind of make it into my lineups because of their lack of of aggression and upside, really, for me. So this is going to be a tough one. I'm gonna look to you to try to help me out here. Maybe, oh God, I know what I'm going to end up doing, aren't I? I'm going to go get a freaking Jared Culver game. I have like 9 people from this Minnesota game.
There's nothing. Yeah, I know.
Or worse.
I can make a really good argument for Jared Culver and T.J. Warren.
Or T.J. Warren, right? That's the next thing I was going to do. Or we could go to your Carmelo, and we go to Carmelo and go with the Carmelo C.J. McCollum nonsense. Oh, all right. What do you think about this position?
I think that if Jay Crowder plays, I like him quite a bit.
Ooh, okay.
As an off-the-board one, I really like Jarrett Culver over here. I really like T.J. Warren. And I actually really like Danilo Gallinari. This is way too cheap for him. And he's been producing. It's another one of those spots where, even with the Shea going off and Chris Paul playing well, he's still putting up 30, 38, 29.9, so 30 basically, and 45 in his last 4 games. There's just upside for him at this price, and there's very little risk in terms of, he's going to play 32 minutes. It's not a good matchup, don't get me wrong. But it's not like he's going to be isolated with Jimmy Butler the whole time. I don't know. I personally think he's kind of interesting. I'm mostly, though, on the Harris and Siakam thing, so it's hard for me to say a bunch else. I've got other pivots elsewhere, like I mentioned at shooting guard, some interesting ones, but I don't.
That's the key, right?
Yeah.
The key is that you don't have to fade all the chalk, and you don't have to fade the chalk, which, let's face it, is chalk for a good reason, right? So as long as you can find other places to pivot, and in a perfect world, get a little correlation at the same time, that's even better. But you don't have to say, boy, oh boy, LMA looks, just too chalky, or boy, oh boy, Horford, I just can't play him because they're chalky. And we talk about this literally every slate, but just in case people are just looking at this for the first time, I mean, all you need to win GPPs, you don't want to go to both extremes. You don't want to be, every position is 3% owned because they're all projected to be 5% worse. Then you're being contrarian. You're going to end up all by yourself in last place.
Exactly. I mean, occasionally that stuff can work out, but it's usually the times you want to do that are like game stacks, because then you're playing an angle on the game, and then if you get overtime, it benefits everyone. You know what I mean? But usually it's hard to have a bunch of guys at under 5% and make it. Although, hey, I almost did it. I had an all under 5% team that finished second 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, and that would have been fun. It would have been the first time I think I had an all under 5% team in NBA win it.
By the way, I don't want to take too much time out of this for nonsense, but again, I will always allocate myself like 6 or 7 minutes, right? So there's going to be, I think, a sneaky amount of value coming up in GPP soon, and I'm going to tell you why. Part of it from last night's results. There's this growing thing on one of the sites where if you just ran just the optimal lineup according to projections, it basically beat the cash line like 70%, like 7 times in a row or something like that, and like 70% of the time. And that whole marketing and that whole narrative is really picking up a lot of steam, and to the point where people are now saying, well, I'm just going to just play this optimal lineup in like all my GPPs, right? And as a matter of fact, last night, like optimal lineups just did pretty well because that's just what happened. Mm-hmm. If that's what's going to start ending up happening, people are just going to run cash builds and put them in GPPs. Those are that to me is the equivalent of like over tight regs in poker, just donating. All right.
I totally agree.
Yeah. If you weren't here to see it, but I spent like literally the first 10 minutes of the DraftKings review yesterday.
But I see it all the time, and it's one thing that I know I'm going into. Like, it's funny because in the high buy-in tournaments, take a guy like Hoop, Mike Petta, like he'll play all the high buy-in tournaments. Like he'll play a $1,500 buy-in tournament with his cash lineup because he's playing $100,000 in cash that day. So we're not talking about a huge risk for him. And while those lineups often run deep and sometimes win, they win tournaments with 200 people or 150 people, right. Not tournaments with 1,000 people.
Right.
It's just way, 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 way harder for that to work out. To win. And could maybe because people watch this more because you're on it or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I'll just say the same thing that I did to you guys last time. There are 2 ways, among others, to lose money, in whether it be poker or DFS. And one is being way too aggressive, and that's one way to lose all your money. And that happens at least quickly. The other way to lose all your money is just to play way too chalky and way too timidly. And that will lose your money, and it will lose it just as surely. It'll just be a slow grinding loss that will just ruin your life. I saw it with people I backed in poker that they min cash, and they went broke. You just can't play that way. And likewise, if you're going to play GPPs with thousands of people, when you're fighting for a top heavy payout against all this high variance lineups, you're just not. If you play your cash lineups in those on a regular basis, you're just going to lose. And it seems kind of hard to say that, you're putting good lineups, you're going to lose. Yeah, you kind of. That's the best way I can describe it. Yeah.
All right, so we can move on. But
let's move on. No, those are great points. Let's talk about the power forward spot over here. It's there's going to be some chalk here, but I feel like there's a lot of pivots. So what do you
you tell me, because for me, Marcus Aldridge and Horford rate to be incredibly credible chalk, and at this particular moment, I can't fade either of them. So you're gonna have to.
Okay, well, I'll help you really, really quickly. Why is Al Horford that much better of a play than Kevin Love?
No, I'm just saying no. I'm just literally being a projection whore right now. I just
Okay. So this is me picking on it, trying to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I really had no reason. Again, I'm just getting drawn in just like everybody else by the projections and by the whatever. I'm like, boy, oh boy, he rates me such a great value, and I could come up with reasons why, beats out, is cheap or whatever it is. But if you can talk me off of this, I'll be more than willing to go play somebody else.
I think Kevin Love is a very strong play. We love him on DraftKings. Why wouldn't we love him over here? Again, you're not going to get no ownership on this guy, but you're going to get. I mean, the thing that's funny about Kevin Love is that his fantasy points per game in close games is probably closer to the 40 range. and Horford is right around the 40 range without Embiid, or 38 range without Embiid. So why would we play a guy with way higher ownership? Yeah, he's got a slightly better matchup, but it's really not that much better. They're both good matchups. So I would just err with the side of it's, and also like, who do we realistically think has more upside, Kevin Love or Al Horford? I think it's Kevin Love, especially on Fanduel. Actually, especially on either side. I just think Kevin Love has more upside.
Bobby, you're going to learn. I threw you such a softball, right? I said, who you want me to pivot to instead of Horford, any of these power forwards? And you're looking at my freaking lineup here, and it's literally like just put it right on a tee, and Domantas Sabonis right there.
There
Boom.
you go. There it is.
But even, is he going to be? Is he? I would think he should get some ownership.
He'll get a little bit, but it's not going to be that much. I mean, again, told you like the spot a little bit better when it was in Minnesota. It's always annoying to play the guy in the exact same matchup after you just got him at 2% at 25%. You know what I mean? But that's just the nature of the slate. So I do think Sabonis is a very, very, very viable pivot. I don't know if you want to get everybody in Indiana, but honestly, if there was a time to play all the Indiana guys, my theory. You just stack like crazy against Washington and Minnesota, and it seems to work fine. Not stack, but just make sure you get a player against them in every game pretty much. So that's sort of what I'm doing. I actually like to spend downs a little bit up here, and I think that you're going to get some real low ownership on some of these spend downs.
Like, who do we got?
So my favorite is Lauri Markkanen at 5K. It's just too cheap. It's the point where we just got to take a shot, I think, and play him. The weird part is it's a guy who's going to be unowned, but is probably gonna is never gonna hurt you basically. Like he's gonna put up 25-ish fantasy points. He's not gonna put up much less than that. I know he's had a few bad games in a row, but I'm willing to completely take that chance. I think there's massive upside here. I think I'm not gonna probably end up getting to Bertans because I like Markkanen enough better, and I like the other guy just a little beneath him, which is Thaddeus Young. I think he's a terrific tournament play at 4,600, and we're gonna see who gets the minutes and stuff with Gafford out and all that. Thaddeus Young, revenge narrative, always a guy I like to get in those little, not necessarily revengey spots, but if he's got the opportunity to play, he can go out there and, I mean, he can put up a big number. He can contribute in so many different ways. Philly's not the ideal matchup, obviously, in general, but I sort of like the narrative of him going back to Philly. And at 4,600, we could see him playing 30 minutes tonight without Gafford in there. We also could, the guy who everyone's going to be on is Kornet. And I'm just looking at it going, would I rather play Kornet or would I rather play paying 400 more for Thaddeus Young, who has a more realistic chance of getting 40, even though they're both unlikely? Or would I rather play Lauri Markkanen, who has a much more realistic chance of getting to even to 45 or like 50 than Kornet does of getting to 40? So I would rather play Markkanen above both those guys, but I do think that they're both interesting. So it's basically the Bulls guys are my spend downs at power forward at the moment.
Do you ever, only because you mentioned Love, I just look at guys from the other side, you like Jaren Jackson at all?
I like him fine. I don't feel any special particular way. Like if you're going to do like a little stack, I would probably want to make sure, because I like the Cleveland side, I don't think I'd play Jaren Jackson without playing two players from Cleveland.
Okay.
Just from a game theory standpoint. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So center, I actually don't believe that center is going to gravitate to anybody in particular. I mean, I'm looking like 4 or 5 guys that rate to be owned a little bit, but I think that this is going to, I don't know, maybe this is going to spread out. So I'll just go through the plays in order. If you want to know the truth, for me, my favorite play, probably given upside, I mean, he's probably going to be owned a little bit, but he's never owned as much as he should be, is Valanciunas.
It's strange to play Valanciunas on a night that he's going to be chalkier on FanDuel than he's never chalky. He's going to be a little bit chalky tonight. I've got him as my center on DraftKings right now, but not on FanDuel.
That's so funny. So you talk about two guys that project similarly to me, and even the same price pretty much is the difference between Valanciunas and Steven Adams, like, for example. These are just like two totally different types of plays. I would have no problem, using Adams in one type of lineup where I need something a little more conservative, and use Jonas in a lineup where I realize that I have, some risk and also have upside also. And then there's Tristan Thompson. They're all these guys are the same price. And Miles Turner, 6,100. They're all the same. I guess if you wanted a pivot, what you probably want to do is go up to Whiteside, right?
Yeah. He's interesting. I think that he's going to have some more ownership than people think. I think he's going to be pretty popular.
Yeah. Well, it depends. I mean, if you're going to go pay off for Luka.
But you still could do it. It's not too tricky to do it on FanDuel. So I don't think that he's going to end up being off the board. Otherwise, I would like him as an interesting pivot. What happens if Steven Adams gets announced out?
Oh, no.
And he just got a midday downgrade to questionable.
Did he?
Well, just questionable. So I'm looking at to be honest, I think that makes Gallinari a better play. I think the rebounding upside is higher. Noel is supposed to come back tonight, but I don't know if he's going to come back tonight. So do we play Muscala? I guess we have to see who's in the starting lineup. I don't know exactly what to do with this one, to be honest with you. It's going to have to hear about Noel and Steven Adams before I do anything, but just something to keep on your radar. I think
you buried the lead. You know who you play if he's out.
Who?
You play Bam.
That's a good point. It's actually a good point. Yeah, I'll make a note of that. Write that one down.
But yeah, I didn't even realize that he was downgraded to questionable.
Yeah, I mean, he still may end up playing, but just something to keep in your back pocket, like to make sure. And that if you want it, like the thing is, if we'd seen Noel if he'd been playing recently, I would just say take the shot if we don't know by lock. But I don't think you do that on this slate because we don't even know Noel might have like a 20-minute limit or something. So it might be Mike Muscala or something. It's just a weird, not an exciting situation exactly, even if he's out.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing in matter of disclosure, I do happen to, if I had to rank these two power forward guys, I do think that Aldridge is a much better play than Horford. Assuming if we were playing draft, like one against the other one, you know what I mean? I do think that Aldridge is better, but I just think that I think they're both going to be highly owned. And if I had to pivot off of one of them, it'd probably be Horford, assuming the ownership is where it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I like Aldridge a little bit better, but I again, definitely don't mind Horford. I just like him a little bit better. I think that the center spot here, what I'm leaning at, and it's a weird one, and it's the play that I made the other night when he was literally unowned. Like I think he was 0.5% owned. Why are we completely off of the Gorgui Dieng train? This feels like a really good spot to play him. You have a team that insists on playing two bigs pretty much all the time. So what happened in the last game? His minutes had been down. I went and we talked about it. I got criticized on Twitter by somebody for saying, how could you suggest Gorgui Dieng when he's only playing 16 minutes a game? Well, what did he play against last time against Indiana? He played 28 minutes.
I find it amazing that, I mean, honestly, I find it amazing people get into Twitter arguments like that. It really is. That's why I have no problem with I got a little taste of this when I did the live thing yesterday. Mm-hmm. Got one comment like, "Don't you like this more than this?" or whatever. Remember about what this is all about. This is all about probabilities, and it's all about if things have a chance to happen or whatever. But for you to take such a hard time, how the hell can you like this? You know what I mean? Everything is context, and you should really have an open mind about different ways that things can go. Like you tell me that Gorgui Dieng is 60% owned. I'm like, he's atrocious. You tell me no one's playing him, and people are jamming in these $6,500 guys. Then he's just a tremendous play. You tell me that I'm going to be playing guys like Lamb and Brogdon or Sabonis in the same game. Hell, I'll freaking throw him in, just for spite. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I certainly feel as though that again, you get into the sub 10% range. You get a guy like this, you could then spend up other plays. I think it's terrific.
I just want to point out his last matchups against teams that play two bigs and teams that play one big. Oklahoma City, one big, obviously, 16 minutes. Houston, one big, 18 minutes. Portland, one big, 16 minutes. Memphis, two bigs, 23 minutes. Cleveland, two bigs, 29 minutes. in 28 minutes against Indiana. It just, that is a trend. That's something people aren't capitalizing on, is seeing where he's getting the minutes and where he's not. I'm not saying they couldn't fall off or he couldn't get in foul trouble. Sure, of course that could happen. I'm not saying he's a lock for 28 plus minutes, but I think that, like, honestly, he could have played more minutes the other night. It's just the game sort of started getting away a little bit at the end. But I don't know. I'm gonna play some Jang tonight. I think he's a really interesting play at 5,100. And I like Tristan Thompson just fine, but I think at high ownership, I'd try and look elsewhere. But I don't think he's like a bad play. Him and Valanciunas. His center is a really not a strong position. So making a pivot to a guy and maybe even locking in a guy like Gorgie for me might be a way that I consider going on Fanduel. And then I could play the guys who I like as chalk elsewhere if I want to.
Yeah. And the only other guy I literally had on the center position that I would even consider is I don't even want to play him, but Podol, if you want to really go down to 3,900. I mean,
yeah, or
never a bad idea to play centers against them.
Yeah, Dwight Powell, Maxi Kleber are both in play also, by the way.
Oh, that's right, because what's his name is out, right?
Yeah, because he's out. I wish they had dropped Kleber's price a little bit more. I would have been all over him if he was under 4K. So I was hoping he'd go back to the pre Kristaps, back when Kristaps was playing days. But I think at 4,700 is probably the wrong move. There's just too many strong plays.
And finally, just only for those that didn't watch the DraftKings thing, I'll just put it to you this way. If you are thinking of playing Boban tonight, go play him on DraftKings. He's 3,600 here, and he's flat 3K on DraftKings.
I agree, although we did mention the center position is pretty weak over here.
It is.
But probably not that weak. We can probably do better than Boban.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I mean, I think I'd find a way to find a 300 for Podol even.
Yeah, and let's be aware. Like, remember, like, we haven't spent as much time talking about this Bradley Beal in this show, and when everybody sort of jumps off, and then we don't really, we think the minutes are going to be more around 30, not the 34 to 38. First of all, even in 30 minutes, Bradley Beal can put up a ton. Also, a tough game if he's got it going at Toronto. I've watched Bradley Beal just say, "No, I'm not coming out of games a million times before." Playing the defending champions, getting up for that game, the fact that I'm running it back with Siakam on the other side, just think he's probably a better play than I originally thought.
Okay, so I guess to wrap up, there are two plays again that we talked about that we spent like 5 seconds on that I just wanted to kind of just revisit. One guy that you completely reminded me of how good of a play he was today. And one that I wanted to bring up from the DraftKings thing, which I didn't spend as much time on here. And one guy that you mentioned that you're not going to play probably on DraftKings as his price is, but on FanDuel you could is Kevin Huerter. You mentioned him for like a couple of minutes here, but I mean he is just even on a relative basis, he's just such a great value here relative to especially we as on DraftKings. And if you do believe that San Antonio is going to do some funny business to lock down Trae Young somehow, I mean, look, they're not that great, but they definitely have tricks, San Antonio. And if they do some scheme where they try to get the ball out of his hands, you want to give Huerter just a zillion open threes at 5,500. I mean, I'll take my chances, right? And and the other guy, again, just from a basketball scheme perspective that I brought up on DraftKings just for a little bit is with Teague being traded to Atlanta. That's one of the reasons why Napier is becoming a good play and it's going to be, takes some ownership as well, but not as much as DraftKings. You can, and one of the reasons we like Culver a little bit here is because those backup point guard minutes are kind of up for grabs. If you do want to take a shot, as I mentioned on DraftKings, but also here on Wiggins at shooting guard, there is that chance that he might get some extra point guard work, or at least call it quote unquote point guard. He'll grab the ball. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe that's what a guy like that needs to get that ceiling game, is to not be the guy to stand in the corner and just wait to come off the dribble handoff and work from there. Maybe just needs to just bring the ball down and just kind of just work for a shot right from there. Who knows?
Yeah, but, if the ownership is going to be non-existent again on Wiggins, like he was 1% the other night, I would go back to him if he's less than 5%, like a lot more. Maybe, but I think he's probably going to end up being more in the 10 to 20 range.
I think so.
If he's not, though, I agree completely with what you're saying. Like, I think he is going to dominate the ball on the offensive end more than he has. The only thing is some things have changed a little bit. Like Culver has become a little bit better. Napier is actually a guy who can create even more than, I don't know. They're still, if they're going to stay in the game, they're probably going to need something from him. So I think it's actually reasonable.
And I hate to do this, when we go through this stuff, and I can see people that haven't done DFS for a decent amount of time or listening to us going over stuff, and we're saying, you like this, but only if he's low owned? I mean, like, can you just take a stand on something? Can't you just like somebody? Can't you just hate somebody? It just doesn't work that way. You know what I mean?
No,
it just doesn't work that way.
With few exceptions, it does. Like there was, I'm trying to think of what it was. There was one we got into the other day that I just said, no matter what, I'm just playing him.
Right.
It doesn't matter what the ownership is or anybody. I can't remember who it was, but it comes up like that sometimes. But mostly, you can almost always try and find a game theory way of finding, of liking other guys. That's the way you've got to play this game, in my opinion.
And then just to piggyback off that, remember, you're not entering, you're not entering 9 plays. You're entering 1 play of 9 players, right? So, you could eat chalk in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of the spots and still, and still pivot off on the others. But, this is standard stuff. But again, that's why you just have to keep pounding it into your head.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because we'll get some mixed responses because a lot of our viewers are pretty savvy. And then some of our viewers are beginners. So if sometimes we feel like we're over explaining some things, look, that's just, because we're trying to include everyone. If there's anything specific that you want to see or hear more about, or any kind of numbers or anything, just please let us know. We're happy to hear from you on Twitter, here on YouTube, anywhere. And remember to give us the like and the thumbs up, and we'll keep bringing out the free content for right now. Sheets, anything else before we get out of here?
No.
All right. Well, good luck to Sheets. Good luck to me. Good luck to all of you out there. And let's have a great day, guys. Good luck, everyone.